What's up, guys? Devin and Adam from Cover 3 Media here. Today we're going to do a 2023 rookie running back rankings list here, just so you guys can get a more in-depth profile on each of these players who we're thinking are going to be going in the first 2 rounds probably of your fantasy football drafts upcoming 2023 here. So anything you got to add to that, Dev?
No, let's dive into it, guys. Playoffs for fantasy are going on now, so hopefully you guys can win your championships. If not, if you're out, this is what you got to look forward to. If you kept your own first-round picks, it's a deep class. There could be guys you can find in the second and third round that could be great players for you long-term. So,
yeah, definitely. So I'm just going to get the rankings started here, guys. I'm sure you already expected this, but Bijan Robinson, the first guy on our rankings for running backs here. I think you guys expected that. A lot of great things to say about this guy. So let's just get right into it. Bijan, again, he's got the prototypical running back build where he's 6'2", 220. He's got, respectable, speed. I don't think he's got, the best speed in this draft class. I think he's got a little bit of an average or, a little bit above average overall high-end long speed there. His acceleration out of his cuts are pretty dang good for his size, which I do like. And he's also got, I think the best thing about Bijan is just his ability to create space with his elusive running nature there. I think he has very, very nice cuts that creates a lot of space laterally, good jukes, good, change of direction. So, yeah.
yeah, he's definitely a cutback king. I mean, a lot of people are viewing him as like a top running back prospect since Saquon. I don't know if I fully agree with that, but he's pretty damn good. And I mean, I hope for a landing spot. I mean, I think a dream for a lot of people for any running back in this draft would be Miami just because of that scheme. But we know how Miami is looking like San Francisco where they like to use multiple backs, so it's kind of scary. Or even an Atlanta team that if they took him in the first round, they're a very run-heavy team. And I think Bijan would fit in nicely. I really think he doesn't need to go to an insane great spot to be good still. I think there's only about maybe 2 guys that are pretty much, or go to any team and be good, but yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree there. I mean, there are definitely the landing spots we think are going to be fabulous for him. But like Devin said, wherever he goes, unless he's behind a veteran back who's, still relatively young or just that solid, that's where I might be like, okay, that stinks. We're not going to see his production right away, but we're going to see it eventually. And like Devin was saying, like even on a team like Atlanta, where I think he would have a lot of volume there, would be just amazing for us as fantasy owners. A lot of volume in the rushing game and the passing game. Like we've mentioned before, he's really a true 3-down back that can do it all in that regard. And I do agree with Devin along the lines of the whole, Saquon thing. I mean, I get there's like certain comparisons, but I do have to say I think Saquon has more, just overall more explosiveness up and down the field especially, and I think Saquon is a little bit more physical when he creates contact. In my eyes, that's just what I see, but there's time to see what Bijan does in the NFL. There's definitely will be that for sure.
I think really the only similarity is just like their cutbacks and like shiftiness, but yeah, I think Saquon's way more explosive and faster, and even with the ACL injury, he's still looking like he has it like explosiveness. So
right. Yeah, I mean, there's just a special edge and explosiveness that you see Saquon play with, where you're just like, holy crap, this guy's insane. And probably also there's a little bit of the utilization of the passing game, I would say, is pretty comparable there too. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah, you want this in full PPR, I think. I mean, in Superflex even, guys, that's probably what we're going to be diving into more, but I think Bijan still I would take over quarterback. I think he's pretty guaranteed to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. If he's not, I'd be very surprised. Even with the running back landscape, NFL teams not valuing them as high, I still think I'd be very shocked if he doesn't go in the first round in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's definitely he could be taken mid-first round, and I wouldn't really, I wouldn't knock an NFL team for doing that. I think I could respect them for that, and I think also one other thing we mentioned here that's kind of about these running backs is I think the NFL might start to notice more and kind of get more back on track of having a good running back and drafting a good running back, as we saw this year with the Jets, how much Breece Hall improved that offense just because of how much he was doing overall production-wise. Dameon Pierce, a little bit, not as much of an impact as Breece Hall, but still Dameon Pierce on such a terrible team was able to, have good games, and I think they help the Texans, score here and there. So I think should be taken into account here for these NFL teams. Anywho, we want to get going here because that's only one player.
Yeah.
So let's talk Jahmyr Gibbs here.
Yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, every time you hear his name, you're going to hear Alvin Kamara comparisons. What I would say is picture Alvin Kamara, but it's faster. I think if he wants to be a true bell cow running back, he's going to have to add a little muscle, but I really think Jahmyr Gibbs is another player that, regardless of landing spot, is pretty set to be a damn good NFL and fantasy receiver. He's a great pass catcher. He's just explosive. He's very fast, and he's got NFL star written all over him. And I know Bijan's the cream of the crop everyone's talking about, but I wouldn't be shocked if Jahmyr ends up having a better career in the NFL. More than just fantasy, because in PPR, I think he's just going to be so dynamic. I expect him to catch close to 50 balls his first year. Obviously, that depends where he goes, but he is so fast. I mean, he's got the best overall, all-around skill set, I think, in this class, personally.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think in the NFL, to succeed, he's going to have to rely more heavily, unless he starts putting on some more mass and building more strength. I think he'll have to rely more heavily on his speed, elusiveness, and receiving, which is totally not a problem because, again, watching his film, very quick footwork here. Certain cuts he makes, he's very low to the ground. It's pretty amazing when you really look at it. And lowering that center of gravity, I noticed it's kind of a combination of things where he's very elusive, makes very quick and shifty cuts to the point where he changes a good tackle to an arm tackle because he creates that much space between him and the defender. And when he does make those really deep cuts where he gets low, those arm tackles just shred right off of him. So I think he's got some great qualities there. And again, very, very nice usage in the passing game for Alabama. So like Devin said, I very well could see him being having a better career than Bijan, depending how his progression goes and if it continues to have a nice little trend line upwards. So
yeah, I think a dream landing spot for a lot of running backs always is the Chiefs, but I just think Jahmyr Gibbs' skill set would fit just magically there. I think if he can go to a team that can get him in space, he's going to be a home run hit, and I still wouldn't take him over Bijan, but it's going to be hard not to. I mean, it's about landing spots a little bit, but Chiefs would be awesome. It would be really cool if maybe the Saints, Kamara gets suspended, maybe they get a little Kamara 2.0 on their team. That's just an idea. But again, guys, it's really hard to predict where these running backs are going to go because there's a big free agency class coming, and free agency will happen for the draft, so that should give us more certainty. But again, guys, these two guys that we're talking about here, I think regardless where they go, unless it's really, really bad, or they're got to play behind someone, they should be fine. The next guys after this, there's some of the top guys we like in a certain order, but again, it will determine between draft capital and team landing about how much opportunity they're going to get quicker than others.
Completely agree. I think these top two are relatively untouchable considering their overall, reputation with the NFL currently, and the people making the decisions in the draft. And again, I think the draft capital spent on them and their overall what they've shown us so far, they're pretty solidified in the top two for me. But yeah, I think another great landing spot here, and I'm not necessarily sure they would pick him or it'd be like a good landing or I don't know if he'll end up being there because of where he's gonna be taken in the NFL draft. But if a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs went to the Chargers to replace Austin Eckler, maybe Jahmyr Gibbs is there for a year or two before Eckler, steps back and goes into more of a backup role or retires. I do think that'd be a fantastic spot considering how much the Chargers use Austin Eckler in the passing game. I think they're one of the top in the NFL for dumping the ball down to their running backs. So that'd be fantastic for a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs who has such good work in the receiving game and explosion there. I will say the one thing about Jahmyr Gibbs that I would be a little bit concerned about is, again, I would like him to go to a team more so like the Chiefs or someone that is a more pass-oriented offense, because I don't necessarily like a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs being more in a situation where he's going to be more relied on for the running game. I would like him to have a good amount of rushes per game, but I would like him to have 4 to 5, maybe 6 targets a game in the passing game. So some offenses might not be able to utilize him that way.
Yeah, I think he definitely is going to need another running back to complement him. Not saying that's going to make him not a good fantasy asset, because we're seeing guys like Eckler and, pass catchers that are still good for PPR don't need to get every single snap to be effective.
Yeah, totally agree. Next guy on our list, we got Zach Evans here. Definitely probably a more solid, selection here in the second tier running backs, I would say, where we're probably the most confident he's going to be, drafted the third running back off the board as of right now. Although we might have a little bit of different opinions on who we think should be the third guy off the board. Devin and I have made our own rankings. We kind of merged them together and kind of made adjustments so we could have a one all-inclusive rankings. But I do have to agree with Devin that Zach Evans should be number 3 if we had to make a decision together. So do you want to tackle that a little bit more?
Yeah, Zach Evans, he's a really strong interior runner. He's very physical, very athletic, really good contact balance. I'm a little unsure about how great he'll be as a receiving back in the NFL, but we've seen guys in the college not produce a lot of receiving game because of their offense or whatever, and still able to catch 25 to 30 passes, which is great. Zach Evans, I think he's going to be a beast. I think it's a pretty good shot he's that third running back taken. And again, it's going to determine landing spot for sure. If he's going to a team that he's getting work right away, I will want to take him as my third running back. I think a dream spot would be Philadelphia. I think, Miles Sanders is having a pretty good year, but I think he's replaceable. And Zach Evans there would be very dynamic, I think, with Jalen Hurts running that little zone read and everything. And another spot would be the Bills, I think would be really cool. I think, people want the Bills or Chiefs to take like a Jahmyr Gibbs because they're, pass so much. But don't forget, guys, we're not high on him, but the Bills do have James Cook. They did take him earlier in the NFL draft. So he is pretty locked in to be a third down back, I think, for them for a few years. So Singletary is a free agent, and I think Zach Evans could fit that role and just be way, way better than Singletary. And, Zach Evans was at TCU, and he transferred to Ole Miss, and you saw him dominate in the SEC, and that's some damn good NFL players that he's playing against on those defenses. And the only reason his numbers aren't as high is a guy named Judkins, who's a freshman right now, that watch out for 2025. He's going to be talked about one of the top backs, if not the top back. So that's the only reason why his numbers aren't as high here for this season, but he's a dynamic player, and yeah, I'm excited about the guy, especially where he goes.
Yeah, his volume stats aren't crazy, but honestly with college, sometimes it's not too big of a concern for me if their volume stats aren't insane. Like I said in the mock draft, Dameon Pierce, his volume stats are basically non-existent, but there are certain things about him that really were transferable to the NFL. I think Zach Evans for sure, he could fit in the Bills system and work well there. But if I had to project, if a smart person was in the front office of the Buffalo Bills' decision making, I don't think Zach Evans would necessarily be the best pick from the standpoint of, I think, James Cook, they picked him last year, good receiving back, pretty quick. I think they'd probably benefit more from a guy who could take more of a pounding than Zach Evans. I think Zach Evans is more of an elusive back, and he still can carry a considerable workload, but he's not going to be like a power back that you're going to necessarily be always throwing in on third and shorts or, a goal line carry. Although I think he can do it, I just think that they might benefit from a better player or a bigger back in that regard. But I do think another good landing spot for Zach Evans might be even, I hate to say it because I'm a Packer fan, but the Bears, with David Montgomery possibly leaving their team, I know Khalil Herbert's there, but I don't know how much they're invested in him. I think Zach Evans could show up to the combine and really shock some people with how fast he is, especially for his build. He's not the biggest back, like I said. I think he runs true to his size. That's 6 foot 215. If he's 210, it's a little bit on the lighter side of things, but I think again he's very quick. He doesn't shy away from contact for his size, which is great to see. Comes out on top of some, hard hits that I've seen in his tape, which is good. But yeah, I could see even the Bears or even the Cardinals too, because I do think even though his receiving work hasn't been like a lot, he's done good work when he does get the ball in the receiving game, and I think just his play style, if he can be a decent receiving back, would be a good fit for the Cardinals or the Bears, considering their quarterback situation. Kyler is much better than Justin Fields so far as passing, but who knows what's going to happen there.
Yeah, right. He's probably not going to be playing this year.
Yeah. All right, and then I will say also, one more thing about Zach Evans is just obviously doing my own research and looking at other people's videos. I think that's a good way to learn, seeing different perspectives and whatnot. But Zach Evans has one of the highest yards created in the league for college football and NCAA. So that might be something to take into consideration as well, as yards created, a very good advanced stat for these college football players. All right, and then number 4 in our rankings, we got Kendre Miller. I know right now there's a lot of wishy-washy feelings about him. We've got some comments on my videos about Kendre Miller being rated so high. I think in the perfect world where Kendre Miller gets the perfect amount of appreciation I think he deserves based on the film I watched, I think he could be the 3rd running back taken off the boards in the NFL draft, but realistically, I think it's probably going to be a late 2nd round pick or anywhere in the 3rd round. If I had to guess, I think that would be where I would expect him to go. Maybe it could be a little bit later, but I just don't see running back NFL teams like taking risk on him as of right now any higher than that. He has had good overall efficiency across his career, averaging 6.7 yards per carry the whole span of his time at TCU. So he's had good efficiency there, guys. And he's got a great build for running backs, 6 feet tall, 220 pounds. And I think another thing that I think is really gonna spark interest in him for the NFL draft is his age. He's 20 and a half years old as of right now. Coming into the 2023 NFL season, he's gonna be like a fresh 21, which is great. And I do think his combine is going to be a little bit predictive of his landing spot and his overall hype. I think if he can get I think based on what I've seen, I think he's got a 4.45 40. And doing some research on some like unofficial stuff, I think if he can get below a 4.45, that'd be great for his overall draft capital because of his size and pairing that speed. But just to quickly discuss a little bit more, he's got some good yards created after yards after contact per attempt, which is good to see. He does have a good, forced missed tackles rates, 31% of his carries, and then like I said, the yards after contact per attempt is about 3.6, which is pretty dang good, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got very, very good vision. Like Adam said, he blends good size and speed. I think, again, it will determine a lot where he ends up going, because if he gets the opportunity right away, he could easily be the 3rd running back then over Zach Evans or whoever else emerges. Again, this is going to be tough to predict landing spots. I think Baltimore would be interesting. I think Dobbins is a solid back, but even last week when he had a good week, guys, when he broke that long run, I'm sorry, he didn't look that fast, and I don't like that for his long-term outlook. I think Kendre Miller could go to, if he just goes to the team that he gets opportunity, that he could get carries immediately. I think that's all we can ask for. There's going to be a lot of teams that are going to draft running backs that are going to surprise you, that have veterans on their roster a lot. And all it takes is one injury, and he could be getting, 15 carries a game, which is so valuable in fantasy.
Yeah, I completely agree there. I think one more thing I want to mention about Kendre Miller, just touch on more. Sometimes with the bigger backs, I feel like they can take a little bit of time to get up to speed, which I think is a concern for me, because if they're not big enough to where they can kind of bulldoze people over, or if the offensive line isn't good enough where they can hit the gap full speed and keep on going, it can be a concern for me. But watching Kendre Miller's tape, I feel like he's good at, he's got good elusiveness for his size, and he sheds a lot of arm tackles and whatnot. Breaks a good amount of those weaker tackles, which I know a lot of guys can do that too, but something about that in his tape kind of really, I kind of witnessed there, and I like that. And I just feel like after his cuts, he does a good job of getting to his top speed pretty quickly, just in my mind. So
yeah, so next up at number 5, we got Tanks Bigsby, big boy from Auburn. Let's first off start with this. He hasn't had the insanely great stats this year compared to some of these other running backs, but Auburn's O-line is absolutely terrible, and that plays a big part of that. Obviously, people say, well, if the running back's so good, it shouldn't matter how good the O-line is. He still needs a hole to get through to make things happen. Watch his tape, and he makes things happen, breaks tackles, he's a physical runner. And I think he's got a pretty good all-around skill set. He's shown the ability to catch the ball pretty well, especially this year, 30 catches. Yeah, I mean, he's a really good build for the NFL, and I'm excited to see where he goes. I saw a possible spot for him could be the Vikings. Obviously, Dalvin Cook's still there, but there's some comparisons to Dalvin a little bit about how physical they do play, which I don't know if I agree with it fully, but it would be cool to see him sit back behind Dalvin for maybe a year. We know Dalvin's injury history, and I think Tank would benefit from maybe sitting behind a guy for a little bit and getting more registered in the offense. I think he can definitely be a three down back, but I see him more early in his NFL career being more like the second down back.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, getting more, worked into the offense, getting more experience. But yeah, I think again his build is pretty good for the NFL. I think he's right around that 210 to 215 range as of right now. That might change with the combine, might be a little bit heavier. But I will say I think he's he's got a good, healthy balance of power and agility. I think he definitely runs, if he is truly 215 or 213 is what they got him on ESPN, I think he runs with a lot more power than his weight and his size, which is good to see. I think he makes pretty good cuts behind the line of scrimmage. Sometimes his cuts at higher speeds were in the second level, usually when he's at the higher speed, I think they could be better. But with that overall downhill running style he has, more of like an A to B, rusher in the second level, I think he can, if he kind of hits the gap the right way, he can shed a lot of tackles in that regard. But yeah, like Devin said, with such a weak offensive line and playing in a conference such as Auburn plays in, it's just like, it's going to be hard for any running back to have positive production. And I think one stat, and people will say like, oh, well, it's his offensive line that gives him this stat. I can understand that, but when you're getting met behind the line of scrimmage, and I'll get to my point in a second, when you're getting met behind the line of scrimmage by defensive linemen, no matter who you are, you're going to have a hard time getting any positive yards because they're just so large. Yeah. I mean, even Derrick Henry, we see, if Derrick Henry doesn't get a full head of steam before hitting that line, if they get to him before he hits the line of scrimmage, Derrick Henry has a hard time breaking certain tackles. So a guy like Tank Bigsby, who can put up in college with a poor offensive line over 4 yards after contact per attempt, I think that's pretty dang impressive. I mean, 4 yards after contact, that's how much some guys have averaging per carry. So that's fantastic. I think he forces a missed tackle on 40% of his rushes, which is really good. Just watching some of his games, he makes some really good cuts for his size in the backfield, making defensive linemen miss, some edge rushers, he makes them miss as well. We saw a really nice play in the Alabama game where he faked out, one closer defender, and there were 2 others that kind of bought on his fake, bounced to the outside, beat them to the outside, and got a positive gain, which was great to see against such a team with such, powerful players.
A lot of NFL players always on Alabama.
Yeah, so that was good to see. I think he's got respectable top end speed, that long speed. I think he accelerates pretty quickly for his size. And then I do think sometimes he meets some defensive linemen at the line, which kind of shocked me, to see a running back kind of hit a defensive lineman so hard sometimes for his size. I noticed that a few times. I was like, wow, that was pretty nice. So
yeah,
just good to see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Tank goes. Next guy on the board is Sean Tucker from Syracuse. I'm a little concerned about how fast his 40 is going to be. I think that will determine a lot for me, but I watched him a lot this year when Syracuse was on because they're actually pretty fun to watch. And if he gets good space, he can work very well in it. He's not the fastest guy, he's not the biggest guy, but he's just got an all-around skill set. He's very efficient with what he's given, very good pass catcher, and very good nose for the end zone. I mean, look how many touchdowns he had, 27, rushing touchdowns in 3 years. I think, again, like a lot of these running backs, landing spot is going to be huge in how high he goes. Arizona, I really liked for a spot for him possibly. He does remind me of James Conner a little bit, actually, but with the Kyler injury, I'm a little concerned about that offense. Unless they find a good replacement for quarterback, like Colt McCoy is running that offense, it's not going to be explosive, and it's going to be kind of hard to watch, in my opinion. I think another decent spot would be the Rams, but again, the Rams O-line is so bad that it scares me. But they don't have anybody there. I'm looking at teams that might need a replacement at running back, and I think he's got an all-around skill set. Yeah, he might excel in the passing game more than some other players, but he is athletic. He is, quicker in the short area, but doesn't have the top end speed, which is definitely a little concerning for the NFL. But again, I want to see what he measures at for his weight and height. I want to see what his 40 is, and then draft capital. That's going to be a lot of these running backs. I liked what I saw on the tape, but sometimes the tape is just their best plays. You got to really dive deep into every snap they're getting in every game and see really how good they are and what they're creating for themselves. So
yeah, I completely agree. On our list, this was where we had a little bit of a disparity. I mean, I had Tank Bigsby having the edge on Sean Tucker. Devin has Sean Tucker with the edge on Tank. So I mean, definitely kind of guys that are in that similar area where we got to see what happens with the combine to be more sure. Landing spot will make a difference with these two. I do think Sean Tucker, I think he's still a good back. I think obviously the ability to handle the load in college was good. That's where his volume stats were prevalent. So anyways, I think that these guys can be, it's going to depend. I think a lot of factors are up in the air right now. Like Devin said, his weight might change. I do think Sean Tucker runs a little bit in my perspective, I think Sean Tucker runs a little bit slow as far as his acceleration, explosiveness through gaps and holes, and his overall cuts and space he creates. I think if he is truly 205, 5'10", I think for me, it's a little bit slow for that size. Now, if he comes into the combine and he's 215, I'm like, okay, well, now I can respect that more, and I think he's got more of a bruiser size. The 40 time, it's weird because I think when I watch him run, sometimes I see him break off and it's like, okay, he's got some good speed, and then there's other times where it's like, I don't know. So I've been trying to gauge different articles and whatnot to see what his 40 is. I think personally what I saw, it's going to be anywhere from a 4.5, if I had to average it out, a 4.5 to a 4.55 or even a 4.6. It could be faster. I've seen reports that people think he runs a 4.3, which I just don't even think is possible.
No way. We'd be able to tell.
Yeah, but the one thing that Sean Tucker makes me think about is me analyzing Ken Walker last year. Last year, I was slightly concerned about Ken Walker being 5'9", 208-ish, that a little bit undersized, because Ken Walker, I knew going into the NFL draft, he wasn't going to be a guy who's breaking a lot of tackles that are, good. He's not going to be breaking a lot of good tackles. He's not going to be running a lot of people over. He's going to be relying on his speed, his overall elusiveness, his quick feet, change of direction, and his overall acceleration out of his cuts, which I think we've seen in the NFL. He makes cuts and he's fast out of it. Just bang, 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 hits the hole, and he is just very explosive through his cuts, through the hole, all that. Sean Tucker, if he isn't, I can kind of see similarities where he gets taken down kind of easily sometimes. If he's not having that high-end elusiveness, that's where I get a little bit concerned in his overall ability to be an efficient runner in the NFL. Now, again, he's got that receiving upside now that we're seeing, so it's like in PPR, maybe he's going to have that more of a receiving game he can lean on to get you fantasy points and be an efficient player in the NFL, whereas Ken Walker really needs to more so rely on the ground. So that's the one thing I will say about Sean Tucker is he does have that receiving upside for an NFL team, which is where I'm seeing the NFL trending, and for fantasy.
Yeah, I think, again, determines the volume he's getting for sure, because I think most backs that we're talking about, I think if they get the volume, they can be very good. That's really all it comes down. Not all it comes down to, but it's part of it. I mean, if you can be efficient and you're getting carries and you're getting, especially that he's a good receiving back, that's huge in PPR.
Right.
It's almost more valuable than carries.
One reception for no gain is the same as a 10-yard rush. So
right.
Next guy on our list, Zach Charbonnet. Played 4 years of college, but he's still young, 21, fresh 21 right now. So he'll be entering closer to 22, but that's not bad at all. But he's 6 feet tall, 220 as we know right now. And there's a lot of reports out there saying that he's a very fast running back, 4.4 40, which if he runs that or even faster, that would be really great to see for his draft stock. I think Zach Charbonnet is probably the last guy on this list where I think he can make a considerable bound up these rankings. In my mind, I do think he's a little bit outside of Sean Tucker and Tank, just based on what I've seen from the film. But he's had some pretty good stats over the last 4 years. I know he played for Michigan for 2 years, and then UCLA for the next 2 years. This last season, he averaged 7 yards per carry on 195 carries, 14 touchdowns, and 37 receptions for 321 yards, as you guys can see there. And I mean, that's really good stats. But my one concern there, after doing research, UCLA has a really good offensive line, and sometimes I worry with their overall division and who they're playing against. But 7 yards per carry is still a very good stat for Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah, I will say too, going off that, it is a Chip Kelly offense where, they had some very good rushing stats for their running backs and their quarterbacks, but I don't remember any really Oregon running backs ever translating to the NFL. So that's one thing. I know he was at Michigan as well, but his stats weren't very impressive at Michigan. So I think he is a very talented big back. Again, I think for him to jump some rankings, I think I need to see where the NFL rates him and how they view him, because I have seen on tape that he is talented. He can make some big plays happen. He can get in the end zone. He can catch the ball. But so can these other guys. So, again, I think he's a very talented player. But, again, landing spot and ability that he shows in the combine. Because we have these, projections for what they're listed at height and weight, what they're at for their 40 time. But we really don't know 100% until they go there. And hopefully they do compete. And if not, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, film right now is the best thing we can lean off for this kind of information. I mean, I do notice on some plays he seems like he's got some really good breakaway speed, and other plays I'm kind of like, that could just be that he's going against a corner or a safety who's got a really high top end speed. But I will say, consistently watching his film, I think his acceleration isn't as impressive as some of the other guys. Him going from 0 to 100, I think it's a little bit slower than some other dudes on this list. And when he does get to his top speed, he is not elusive really at all. He needs to slow down, let his body catch up to him in order to make good cuts in the second level. So he is definitely more of like a kind of like a slashing type running back, in the sense where he's got to go point A to point B and just hope he beats people with his raw speed and less elusiveness. So that's where I think he's gonna have to rely on the NFL on vision to hit the right hole and hit it with speed and meet that second level with top speed as he's going. If he's kind of relying on making moves in the backfield and whatnot, that's going to slow him down, and he's not going to reach his top speed based on what I saw. So,
I think he's a solid player. And again, we need to see where he goes, see if he can jump some of these other prospects. So coming in at number 8, a lot of people I've read and seen value this guy a lot higher than we do, and that's Blake Corum out of Michigan. Had a very good season. Also had a knee injury though now that we need to be concerned about. 1,400 yards, 18 touchdown. He is a little bit small though. He is short 5'8" for running back, but he does have the weight on him, which is very impressive to have. If you're going to be a smaller stature, you better have the weight in the bottom of your body. Again, I just don't think he's that special. Michigan's O-line is very, very good. And there's a backup, or the second string on Michigan Wolverines that is going to be way, way better for the NFL coming up. Pretty sure his name's Donovan Edwards. Watch him. He makes Blake Corum look not that good, in my opinion. Corum's a solid back, and I think he could be a solid NFL player, but his lack of size does concern me. He is pretty fast, but again, what's going on with this knee injury now, too? We need to find out more.
Completely agree. I think the knee injury is going to kind of minimize his draft capital, kind of lower him down the draft boards for NFL teams. Drafting a running back fresh out of college that isn't like tier 1 pedigree with a knee injury, I think it's going to lower his stock quite a bit. And I just he's got a similar size. He does look thicker. I will say, than Ken Walker.
Mm-hmm.
But considering they have a similar size in similar frame, Ken Walker is a good example because he's just got he's a fresh rookie now, was recently in college. But again, I think what makes Kenneth Walker work is his overall elusiveness, his overall burst, his explosion. after his cuts and really getting to top speed quickly and beating players around the corner, all that stuff. Blake Corum, I think he makes some good cuts, but just not as like explosive and, overall impressive comparative to Ken Walker.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are going to fight us on Blake Corum, thinking he should be higher, but you might be a Michigan fan and you just think he's better than he actually is. I mean, you gotta realize how good your O-line is. I mean, that's part of it. And again, he could go to a situation where they have a really good O-line and he gets thrown in there and he has a couple of good games. Again, we need to see what he runs because his speed is very good, I will say. But he's a little shorter, but we'll find out what happens with Corum. I am a little concerned. His cuts are solid, but they're not like, oh my gosh, you see that cut?
Yeah.
No. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so those are our solid top 8 running backs. Outside of that, it's really slim pickings. I mean, it's going to depend on who moves their way into the conversation here the next couple months, who makes, who really makes a name for themselves in the combine, and who just really starts rising on draft boards, who really starts getting more attention. Devin and I looked at a handful of guys outside this top 8 that we think are clearly outside the top 8 currently. And we got some guys that we think are up there that we kind of want to discuss that might kind of show up and impress going forward here. So do you want to start off with one of your guys?
Yeah, so one of the guys on my list is Mohamed Ibrahim, I believe how you say it, from Minnesota. I'd watch this tape, from just some of his best plays, and he's a trucking machine. Not saying it's going to translate to the NFL, but Big Ten does have some pretty physical defensive players, and his ability to make things happen when he gets the ball was impressive to me. I don't know where his draft capital lies, but I think he has potential to be a good first and second down back in the NFL, and getting carries could result in some fantasy points and just more opportunity for him down the road. But yeah, he is an older prospect, which is a little concern to me, but he does have the physicality to compete in the NFL, which sometimes that's all you need, and an opportunity is all you need. So,
yeah, unfortunately, I think I agree with Devin on that. I mean, I think when we're looking at his draft capital, I am concerned that he's like 24 currently, and I mean, I think that'll lower his draft stock. I don't think that's going to stop him from necessarily making an impact or having the potential to work his way up a depth chart. But I do think it might be one of those situations like, Ramondre Stevenson, where, he's a physical back. Obviously the ages are a little bit different there, but, where, maybe he gets taken in the 5th, 6th, 7th round to a team that needs a bruiser or, just, some guy who can put in work on 3rd and shorts, goal line carries, and he comes in and he does some good work, and maybe he's a good fill-in for a couple of years. But I do feel like his ceiling for me is a little bit capped as far as right now, as overall what he can do in the NFL and how long he'll be around. So we'll have to see what happens there, really. I mean, it's tough when you get into this area. So yeah, one guy I want to mention, his name is Israel Abanikanda. So Israel, Izzy, I'm gonna call him Izzy because that's his nickname. Found this guy looking through different rankings and all that. And, he was one of the later guys I found. I was looking at probably 6 or 7 other running backs before him. I think what popped off the page for me is he's 20 years old, a fresh 20 years old, specifically like 20.1 years old. He's 5'11", 215, so he's got a nice build. And his 40 projected time is a 4.5, but honestly, what I saw on tape, I think he could be faster. I think he's got some very good long speed. I think he's got also some pretty dang good acceleration for his size. I will say he does run true to his size, where he's not a power back and he's not necessarily an elusive back. I think if he was a little bit lighter and whatnot, he could probably make much more exciting cuts. And if he was a little bit heavier, I could see him being more of a punishing power back. But I think it's a good mix for him. It's a fair mix where he has a good mixture of, elusiveness and power, where he can really utilize that. I think we've seen that for him with Pitt, in some of his games he's had. Makes some nice cuts in the backfield. Multiple occasions I noticed he makes a very quick but subtle. So it's not like a big cut, but it's a very quick and very more of like a smaller cut, and makes someone miss. It's a very near miss, but I think it's nice because it's so quick that he makes one miss without messing around with too much time and needing to stop and change direction as much. So it's a quick cut, and he hits a hole with speed and acceleration, which I really like to see. Makes the first man miss a good amount of time, especially when it's like right at the line of scrimmage. I noticed a few times like that, and he went off for like 7 yards because there wasn't anyone else there. It wasn't anyone else there to fill the gap. So I think that could fill in nicely in the NFL. I think he will start getting more attention. I think his overall draft capital in the NFL, I think the highest he'll probably go with more attention, obviously, would be like mid to late third round. And then I could see him falling all the way to the sixth round just because his overall reputation right now isn't really out there. I want to mention he's got fair work in the receiving game, nothing crazy. I think he's just one of those guys where it's like, I think he can do it, but it's just not, it's just not a lot. And then another thing I want to mention about him is he's had some pretty dang good games. He had, against Virginia Tech, I believe it was, he had 320 yards and 6 touchdowns, and it was like I think he had like 6.2 yards per carry. So having such a big game, he beat Tony Dorsett's record for single game rushing yards. And then he had 54 yards against Tennessee, which, they have a pretty dang good running defense, just looking off the stats. So combine results might come as a positive shock for this guy. Just a guy to look out for, guys. Going forward, he might start springing his way up the draft boards.
Yeah, I think he could be a solid player. Don't know a ton about him, to be honest with you, but yeah, I heard of his name. I haven't looked into him yet, really. But the next guy we should talk about, because a lot of you guys probably have him ranked pretty high, and I've seen him ranked pretty high, is Devon Achane from A&M. Speed kills, man. I mean, they're projecting him to run under a 4.3, which is very impressive. And if he does go to the right situation that gets him in space, he could be a very solid third down back. But that's all he specializes in. He is a smaller back, which is very concerning. 5'8", 5'9", 180. If that's really his weight, it could be lower than that, guys. I just don't see his ceiling being a 3-down back in the NFL. He could definitely have a solid, top 30, top 25 PPR season because of that receiving work he could get. Like, let's say he goes to Miami in like the second or third round. I'd be like, all right, I can see you taking him in the second round because he's going to Miami that likes to use these explosive, fast players like you're seeing with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Not saying he's anywhere near the talent, but he can be a guy that is a great gadget guy, can be a great returner, but I just don't see him being a true special running back that is getting you just 20 fantasy points a game ever. I just don't think that's in his outcomes. Again, he can be a very solid third down back, but when is that really translated to really good fantasy players? I mean, you can say Austin Eckler and Christian McCaffrey, but they're bigger backs. They have weight on them. They have some strength to them. This Devon Achane is a little bit of a toothpick, and I just don't know if that's really going to translate to the NFL. And again, he's got to go to the right situation where they do utilize him in the passing game, which would rank him higher than where we have him right now.
Definitely. I think everything Devin mentioned there, I don't think you can disagree with that. I don't think there's even a discussion on that, personally. I mean, we've seen it time and time again that these very undersized backs like Devon Achane, whatever, he's not going to get it done. I don't think he deserves to be above. I think he should be below Blake Corum. Mm-hmm. Even though we're not the highest on Blake Corum, I think he still should be below him because I just don't think he has that potential. So yeah, another guy to mention here is Miyan Williams from Ohio State, playing against those big Big Ten teams. Good defenses there for some of his matchups. He's 21.2 years old, 5'9", 225, so he's a bigger build. Probably a little bit slower, guys. He's going to be more of that, again, power rusher, power back. So it really depends on what situation he goes to. I don't know if he's going to go any higher than like the 5th round, to be honest with you. So it really just depends where he falls and if an opportunity arises. I think in your rookie drafts, he's probably going to end up being like a late 3rd round pick or even a 4th round pick. But you might be worth just taking and see what happens.
Yeah.
You got anyone else?
I could just mention his name. I don't think he's got a great opportunity to be a great NFL back, but Chase Brown, Illinois, he's had a very, very good last couple of seasons. Watch him a lot because I watch Big Ten a lot being from Wisconsin. He's all around could be a really all around just solid player. He doesn't do one thing way better than anything else. He has got a nose for the end zone, and I think, again, he's just a name to keep out there. If he ends up getting decent draft capital, that could be a nice 4th-round pick for you in rookie drafts, where he might not kill you with anything, but he could just get the opportunity a couple games here and there and shows he can be a productive back. He looked like a very solid player. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, did you see that? See that fucking play? See that damn play? But I think he could just be an all-around solid back. That's really all I have on him. But nothing special, but nothing bad really that I saw.
Yeah, definitely. And then one more guy I just want to quick highlight here, who I think, again, could jump on draft boards just because of his overall production. And depending on his combine, I don't think it's going to be anything too special, guys. I think it's going to be about an average 40 time. But this guy, DeWayne McBride, watching his tape, I kind of liked what I saw out of him. He did go to UAB, so his confidence isn't the greatest, really. So that's definitely a concern. That's where I think his draft capital is probably going to be like 6th or 7th round in the NFL draft, if I'm being honest. But, as a junior, he's, currently, as we speak, he is 21 and a half. He's, as a junior, he had 1,700 yards off 230 carries and averaged 7.4 yards per carry and 19 touchdowns. So, very good workload there. I know it's, again, the conference might be a little bit iffy, but watching this guy play, I think he could transfer to the NFL. But again, he might just be a career backup, unfortunately. So, yeah. That rounds out our rankings, guys. I know we threw some kind of honorable mentions in there that really weren't ranked yet, but stick with it, guys. After the draft combine, we're probably gonna have a better idea of overall more solid rankings. I think once the draft combine comes out too, some of those bigger mock draft guys are gonna be posting mock drafts where we can get a better gauge maybe of where players will be falling, what rounds they'll be going in, and what potential situations they're going to be in. So that will probably change our rankings. We'll make a video on that. And then after the NFL draft, of course, that's going to be the last deciding factor for us, and it's probably going to make the biggest changes. So, drop a subscription, turn on notifications if you guys want to stay up to date with that kind of stuff. Also, go check out our Instagram and TikTok. We got some good daily videos coming out every so often that's got some good in-season content, some good Dynasty content all around. IDP we're starting to introduce more. I think we're gonna start diving more into that come shortly here. But yeah, really good things happening here at Cover 3 Media. We got you covered as always. This is sacred information, so you want to keep your hands on it if you want to win your leagues now and in the future. But anything else you want to add to that, Dev?
No, we got you covered.
We got you covered, baby. Peace.